This episode of Art is sponsored by the Hobnob Theater in Butler, Pennsylvania, hosting a variety of plays and also stand-up comedy shows. Programming includes the Young Actors Studio Theater classes for grades 3 through 12. They even have live music events. You can participate in the first Friday improv of every month. The Hobnob Theater will be launching their 2025 season, including family-oriented plays inspiring and entertaining audiences of all ages. Closing out the 2024 season will be 'Twas a Night Before Christmas, a Christmas noir. So check out their website at hobnobtheater.com for tickets and more information and how you can support local theater and art.
This is art. Any recovery topic is art. Follow us on YouTube, Any Recovery Topic is Art, and also on Facebook, Any Recovery Topic is Art. Joining me today is Reann B. Reann, you're in recovery.
Yes,
And how long have you been in recovery now?
12 years.
12 years. That's quite a bit of time. Let's talk a little bit about what it was like before entering into recovery.
Oh, God. I was a hot mess, but I didn't know I was a hot mess. I got so caught up in the chaos and the ripping and running that's all I knew.
Were you substance abuse or alcoholic, or
Both.
was it both? Okay. Yeah, I can relate because I was the same way.
Alcohol took me everywhere I went. And my recovery date was not my choice. It was of the Allegheny County court system. They decided it was a good idea that I go to jail for 6 months.
Is that where you found recovery in jail?
Yes,
That was your first introduction
yes.
to it?
I
Really?
never knew about it. I grew up in a bar, so recovery was not something you talked about on a regular. You were a quitter if you quit.
Yeah.
And no, that is where I found my first fellowship. And from when I got out, I went to a reintegration program that, showed you how to live clean and sober in the community. And I was still technically an inmate, but I learned how to go to meetings. I learned how to be open and tell the truth because I was anything but truthful. If my lips were moving, I was lying.
We find a lot of politicians like that.
Well, yeah. Sometimes I think maybe if I go into politics, they'll find out everything I did in a blackout.
Now, I hear that quite a bit, that some people have found it a blessing in disguise that because of legal issues, they ended up in recovery and they're still clean and sober to this day. So that's an amazing thing to find. A lot of people, I think, focus on just the trouble of the legality of the jail, the probations, or the house arrest, or anything of that nature. But it can be quite a blessing in disguise. Is that how you really, truly feel
Yes,
about it?
I ran into women that it was a way of life for them to go to jail. I had a lady tell me, "Oh, don't worry about it. I got out on Tuesday and I was back on Friday." Like, that's not okay to me. And I just realized that is not what I know. I didn't want the guards to know me by name. I just didn't want that. I was petrified.
You had an inner desire for something different.
I never wanted to go back there. And what I found and what I was learning was that I didn't have to go back. And then when I came out And I moved to Butler from Gibsonia, and I kept coming back and doing the work because I was petrified to go back. And then somewhere along the way, that fear left, and I was still doing the work and coming back.
How did you know that you were ready?
Fear, honestly. I didn't want to go back to where I was, because when I was there, not one person I drank with, not one person I used with reached out to me, wrote a letter, anything. Like, I went through a good part of that by myself. And I realized who I thought were friends really weren't. And I learned by talking to other people, and primarily talking to the counselor in that program, that there are people that care. And it wasn't necessarily in my old life.
Let's go back to the beginning of your recovery, when you were first going to meetings and making the attempt. What were some of the hardest triggers for you to overcome?
Staying away from the men. I would walk into a room and go right towards them. And I was lucky enough to have some longtime women that took me under their wing. One lady literally came up behind me, put her finger in my belt loop, and dragged me away, said, "You belong here with us, not there with them." Mm-hmm. So I was very lucky in the beginning, because I had women surround me and teach me. And I try to do that today with the new women that come in, the women that come out of the rehabs, and even out of jail. Like, I was going into the jail to work with the women, and I have a couple of them that still stay in touch.
That's awesome.
And I just came back from a recovery weekend, and it was phenomenal. I was in Ohio, and like, you're welcomed home no matter where you go. So it's really kind of cool. I found a way of life that I didn't even know existed, that I couldn't have prayed for if I wanted to, because I had no clue.
And in the beginning, a lot of us have urges, and it's hard to deal with the urges, because the drugs and the alcohol was definitely what we used as our coping mechanism. But once you take the drugs and the alcohol away, what kind of coping skills do you remember using in the beginning to help stay on the path of recovery?
My phone, primarily. I was taught that if you're going to pick up your phone and call your drug dealer, then there's no reason why you can't pick up your phone and call somebody else in the fellowship.
Why is it so hard for people to do that, do you think?
Old habits. Something's uncomfortable, and we don't want to, we don't want to do something that's going to make us feel something. Like, you don't want to feel. Yeah. And that's why we did what we did. And people get upset or worked up for whatever reason, and their first thought is to go numb themselves.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because we practiced so much of deadening the senses, deadening the emotions and the feelings, that stepping into this new world, if you will, it's hard to break those old habits. So what would be the way that you built these new habits? What were the things that you practiced other than using the phone?
Listening, taking suggestions. I had women that would answer the phone if it was 3:00 in the morning. And honestly, my fear kept pushing me forward. I was so afraid of going back, because I know I have one more time out there, but there's no guarantee I have one more time back. My pride and my ego would keep me from admitting that I messed up. But the women and even some men would say, what's wrong? What are you going through? I can tell. And just learning to open up. And it was hard at first. And a lady pulled stuff out of me. You know what I mean? Like she made me feel. And honestly, I went to therapy too. So it's like the combination, just it teaches you. And I didn't learn it overnight. And I still forget it today. Oh, I don't want to bother them. Or, oh, I have enough time. I should be able to figure this out by myself. And there's some things you can't.
So some of the struggles in the beginning that we find, they do come back from time to time.
Yes, they do. Mine was my family primarily. My parents wanted nothing to do with me until I was about 3 years clean and sober. And then they both passed away within a year of each other. I have an older daughter that liked to come and go, and then she'd get upset of something that happened 15 years ago and she'd leave my life. And this last time, I set boundaries. I decided that I don't need to be verbally abused by her. I'm not the person that she's angry at anymore. And I deserve some form of respect.
Now, some of the big things that I've witnessed myself being in recovery, especially in the beginning, were some of the roadblocks, if you will, God being one of them. I know for myself, I had a big struggle with the whole God topic. And in the 12 steps of different programs, it's right there at the very beginning of these steps, in the very, very beginning. And I struggled with that myself. Did you have any struggles with that?
Yes, I was raised Roman Catholic. So I was raised with a vengeful, punishing God. And for a long time, up until I was about 6 years clean and sober, did I find my own higher power.
How did you go about finding your own higher power?
I was reading different things about different spirituality, and I was listening to different people, because it's a higher power of your understanding. And now it's more spiritual for me. It's more elemental for me. I believe in, earth, wind, fire. Oh God.
Wiccan principles.
Yes. I have really leaned towards the Wiccan. I have a god and a goddess. And it's just very different, but it resonates with me. It is something that carries me through my difficult times.
Was this something that you had interest in before recovery, or did you find that in recovery?
It's something that is actually part of my history and my family. My dad taught me a lot. I am part Slovak. So back then they were into paganism and gypsies. So the tarot readings and the spiritual elemental was bigger back then. And I got interested at a young age. I just didn't know what it all meant.
Do you cast spells?
No.
Okay.
Bibbidi boppity boo.
I'm still learning about Wiccan. I have a few people that are around in my life that practice Wiccan, and I'm slowly asking questions like, do you cast spells?
No,
but
I'm not a witch.
No. I think that that seems to be a very big struggle for a lot of people early in recovery, because of the religious aspect, because of background history of what they've experienced in the churches or directly inside the homes because of religion. And it's amazing how I feel that it's such a shame that people can be so separated from God because of religion.
Well, God I used to take a 12-step study into a rehab, and a lot of the girls struggle with that word. And my answer to them was, it's just a word. You can make it whatever you want to make it. And then I explained to them about my faith, and it's, good orderly direction, a group of drunks. It's a higher power of your understanding. And that's not talked about a whole lot. And mine is not understood. And I find myself explaining and sometimes justifying. But people hear Wicca and go right to witch. And you can be, but you don't have to be. I'm more in the spiritual end of it.
Okay. And that's what works for you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's God that you can understand.
Yes, it's my higher power. And when I pray and meditate in the morning, I have my own little ritual, and it's comforting to me. And that's what a higher power is supposed to do.
That's a good answer. That's a good answer. All right, let's talk about the 12 steps a little bit. When you found yourself completing step 12 and you were done with the steps, did you end up going back and redoing all of the steps?
I do them every year.
Yeah.
From my sobriety date to my sobriety date. Now I'm getting into the traditions. I've become very interested in the history of the fellowship.
You primarily Alcoholics Anonymous?
Yes.
Okay. Interesting.
I qualify for both, but I found home in Alcoholics Anonymous.
Okay. So you practice one step in a month for 12 months, or
sometimes it depends. When I first came in, I struggled with my life being unmanageable because I didn't know anything else, and I struggled with the surrender. I thought that the program was going to teach me how to drink responsibly.
Oh.
It doesn't.
There's a novel idea.
It teaches you to live without it. And there are ways to live without it.
I know it says in there that we are not a glum lot.
Oh, no, we're not at all.
That's so I first met you at the pig roast when I was DJing the pig roast, and that was amazing because I can't remember, they're in their 10th year, I think, or something close to that right now. But I was there in the beginning and had done it for years, and that was really amazing that they were doing things of that nature, because coming into the program, I looked forward to those events that were happening, picnics and pig roasts, and there was a bowling league at one time, and I know that there are some guys that have gotten together and done golfing. That's really important, I think, to know that we can have fun in the fellowship, but not just in the fellowship, as a person who doesn't use drugs or alcohol anymore.
Well, I had a hard time sitting around the fire without a beer in my hand. And it was an adjustment. But once you start laughing and talking and you have your coffee, you forget it.
Oh, coffee is so important in recovery.
Oh, yeah, don't mess with my coffee. It's
I need mine.
We were at one of the coffee shops on our way to Ohio, and the girl said, "What size?" And I said, "IV bag."
That's a good size. That's a good size.
Just hook me up.
Yeah. So, in practicing elements of recovery, we have things like honesty, and we have things like admitting we were wrong promptly, Do you find yourself being able to practice everything routinely, or do you go through periods where you have a focus of something that you've noticed you could work on a little bit more, and therefore you find yourself working on one specific thing focused?
Well, honesty, I think of the lies, but they never come out my mouth. Like meeting somebody at a meeting. Oh God, I really don't want to go. And you think all the excuses you can give, and I still end up going because I made a commitment. And that's real big. Our word is all we have. And admitting I'm wrong and promptly admitting it, it's not as prompt as it could be. It takes me a minute, or talking to my sponsor, Ray, you really should, go apologize or go try to make things right. And I do. And my poor boyfriend gets the brunt, I'm sorry. I was acting like a 2-year-old. Because, I throw temper tantrums from time to time. I still want things my way.
Is there an end to recovery?
No.
What do we continue to work for?
Our way of life, our peace and serenity. And even if it's not rainbows and unicorns, it's still better than where we were when we were out there. You work for, sometimes it's your physical things. I have a beautiful life. I have a great apartment. I have things that I worked for that weren't handed to me. I, know how to pay bills. I know how to adult today. And if I would go and put something back in me, I would lose everything again. Because through my addiction, I lost things over and over and over again. And I'd get them all back, and I'd just go right back to my old way of life. So what I have found in recovery is freeing and so much better than I lived for the first 30 years.
After this many years of being in recovery, what can you give credit to as giving you the drive to continue?
The meetings. I go to meetings and I learn something new every meeting I go to. And the friends you make. I have friends that when they don't hear from me for a couple days, they call and check on me. I have women that want what I have. And I'm like, really? Who? Like me? Because I was the girl you ran from. And I was not the girl you brought home to meet your family. Now my boyfriend's family calls me instead of him some days to say, hey, I was thinking about you. I never knew that. So it's, I found love and support, and I don't want to lose that, because I've never known a love that I found in the rooms.
So fear of losing something valuable that we've gained is quite a motivator.
Well, fear has changed for me. I was afraid of living my life without putting something in me because I didn't know how to deal without it. And now fear for me is, as weird as it sounds, a little healthier. Because like I said, I know I have one more time out there, but my fear is I don't have one more time back.
I still have fears today too, but I can recognize them. I have tools and techniques to use to counteract them. And a lot of fear for me in the past was, who's going to let me? And now I say, who's going to stop me?
Exactly.
I see a lot of growth in myself. I see a lot of growth in people around me who have been around, and not always for a decade or more, sometimes even just 6 months at a time. And I see the growth in them. And man,
you watch their heads come up. and get a light in their eyes.
Yeah.
And I was like that. I could have told you everybody's shoes in the rooms because I didn't feel worthy. I was broken. And somehow way those broken pieces got taped back together. And I learned who Reann was. Because for a while I was a chameleon. I was whatever you wanted me to be to get what I needed to get.
Mm-hmm. I think for me, a lot of it was I had walked into the beginning of this path thinking that I was going to get back to myself again, but I realized that I had been so incomplete, and the tools of the program and recovery have given me a way to realize that I need to basically just create myself as a whole person who can be happy.
And sometimes you're not as whole as you want to be. Like before I went to this weekend, I was emotionally struggling because there's things going on in my life, which there's always going to be something going on in your life.
Life always shows up. Isn't
Always.
that amazing?
You know, I have a friend that is terminally ill. I have my boyfriend is having some health problems. So it's always all at once, like the tsunami hits.
Mm-hmm.
But we use our tools and our fellowship. And, you know, I can talk to my boyfriend. I can shoot out a text and say, hey, can you talk? And I journal. I write a lot. And I have my goddess box. A friend of mine made it for me. Instead of a God box, she put ESS on the end. And I have people that accept me no matter what, my good days, my bad days, and everything in between.
That's such a blessing.
It is. It's amazing. Because before there were, even from your family, well, you have to do X, Y, and Z in order for me they may not have said it, but for me to love you, for me to accept you. And even when you make those amends, doesn't mean the problem's solved. They're always going to hold on to something.
I always like to ask myself in the mornings, what am I grateful for? And what am I practicing? Because I've learned the value of both of those. You know, there's actually scientific studies on gratitude, on how the brain reacts when we are feeling gratitude, the overall health of a person when a person is routinely thinking of gratitude. And I know that that's a big topic a lot of times in recovery, and I've found it super beneficial. But the other thing, practicing, just like in the beginning when it was suggested to me to do 90 meetings in 90 days, I thought, wow, that seems so overwhelming and daunting, you know? But it was through those 90 days that I had been practicing without realizing what I was doing. And what I was doing was I was learning how to practice the things that would not only get me clean and sober, but also keep me clean and sober.
And you start a habit. Just like we got into the habit of using and drinking, you get into a healthy habit. And that's how you meet people. I was taught you go around and you shake as many hands as you can. And you talk to as many people as you can. And then you go outside. I'm a smoker. So you talk to the other people outside. And that's where I learned I built some of my relationships. And it's something as simple as smoking, which isn't healthy for you either. But
Not suggested, kids.
do not smoke. It's you talk. Like we have a function coming up at the end of the month, the gratitude dinner. And I love it because you stand outside and you see people you don't see regularly. And it's just, it's amazing that the people I have met are not just in Butler, but Kittanning, Cranberry, Mars. I met a bunch of people in Ohio and people that I got numbers, and we will stay in touch. And I will see them in March, I think. And I'm very big on retreats and going. I went on a woman's recovery cruise.
I wanted to go on that, but they wouldn't let me.
No, you're big an ugly woman. That just wouldn't work for you, hon. Sorry.
Okay. Recovery joke. Two guys walk into a bar. One ducks, the other doesn't. You got one?
A giraffe, try that. A giraffe walks into a bar and says, "Hey, everybody, the highballs are on me."
A Chihuahua walks up to a bar and he says, "I'll have a rum and a Coke." And the bartender said, "What's with the little paws?" And the Chihuahua said, "I was born with them." You got anything you want to say to anybody out there that may see this, that's struggling or considering getting into recovery?
One, reach out. You don't have to do this alone. There is somebody out there that understands and has been where you have been. So reach out to us. We're here.
And if you have a loved one who's struggling, try reaching out, make some phone calls, and see what you can do to try to give any kind of influence. Any attempt is worth it.
And there's other fellowships for friends and families of an addict and an alcoholic that can teach you how to deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's worth doing something uncomfortable.
We'll post some phone numbers in the description of the video. I want to thank you so much for coming and sharing with us. I think it's really important to share the hope that people like you and I have found in this program and other programs as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, thank you again.
Thank you.
Give us a like and subscribe on YouTube. Any recovery topic is art. And like our Facebook page and leave a comment. Thanks for watching.